All right. Hello, everybody. Today's date is November the 18th, 2024. Over the last 2 months, I've been having some pretty crazy issues with my car, and I figured today is a good day to get into the story time and tell you all exactly what's been up for the last 2 months. So let's track back toward summer of 2023. Myself and my buddy Xavier, we replaced the timing chain on the GTI. Car was approaching pretty high miles, and while it had the updated tensioner, the chain was starting to stretch, so we figured, you know what, let's just do a service and make sure it's all nice and healthy for going past the 200,000 mile mark. Service went just fine. And fast forward to, let's see, September of this year. I moved to Texas in June, and basically in September on my way to work, I was at the last red light before turning into my office from Highway 360, and gave it a little bit of extra gas on the highway. It was a real nice day out, and I take off from the light. I'm kind of toward the front. First, second, third, lay into it a little bit more on third. Not all the way, not full boost or anything, but by the time I hit fourth, the car starts going, it starts stuttering, it starts breaking up, and I'm like, so instantly clutch out of gear. I start taking a log for my tuner. And thankfully I'm going down the hill basically to get to the turn into the office. So I eventually gear into fifth and sixth, and the car is still coasting fine. Basically engine braking, no gas. And I get to the bottom of the hill, clutch out like I always do, pop it in neutral, because I have to wait for cars to go by before going up the little hill up the turn to get to my office. And as I clutch out into neutral, as I slow down to zero, car stalls. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, this stuff has happened before. Every now and then the car will occasionally stall. Maybe I just left it in gear for a little too long, especially since I was coming out of sixth, but kind of unlikely, but whatever. Fire the car back up, boom, comes back to life, and get into first, jump across, second, up the little hill, and it's breaking up on me as I'm going up the hill. It's like, it's making a lot of noise, way too much noise. I thought it was because the wastegate was wide open and it was just dumping exhaust out. Anyways, I get it into the parking lot of the office, and I go about my day. I make a few calls. At this point in time, I didn't have AAA, which is a shame. I always get it for my road trips, but I didn't think I would need it now that I was down here in Texas, because I was only making little back and forth trips to work for the most part. So anyways, lunchtime comes around. I walk to my car, see if it'll fire up at least, if it'll idle. And the car, sure enough, it does idle. Idle seems fine. I'm like, wow, well, this is great news. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to drive it back home if it's at least able to idle. Okay, perfect. So I go about the rest of my day at the office. All the way at the end, I fire the car back up, get it back onto the highway basically, which is the annoying part, is that as you turn out of our office, you're basically right on Highway 360. So it actually at the bottom of a big hill. So, you know, first, whoop, second, whoop, third, the car starts like kind of breaking up a little bit, and it's making way too much noise. So what I end up doing, because thankfully I had a green light to go all the way to the top of the hill, was basically clutching in and out of third gear. I don't know if it was third or fourth, depending on how much speed I had at the time, which was really weird. I don't even know why I did it, but I got to the top of the hill. I take the exit onto Bee Cave Road, and it's mostly just like a back road. I come to the light, And I'm like, well, I cannot drive this thing home. It's probably not gonna make it, because anytime I get over like whatever 1500 to 2000 RPM, it just breaks up. So I get, I don't know, quarter mile down the road, pull into this really big church parking lot, and thank God it was a nice and quiet spot. At that point, I called my roommate. I'm like, hey man, can you bring me some tools? At this point, I thought it could be either a bad injector, a bad coil pack or spark plug, or even just a pipe coming off. So I pop up in the hood, I'm taking a look all around the engine bay. I couldn't exactly see what was going on. My buddy even brings me my jack, so I get underneath the car and I still can't see any pipe totally loose, because usually it would be intercooler pipes, the throttle body pipe over there, intake, whatever. All those look fine, exhaust looks fine. I'm like, well, I had to guess that it was an injector, because just based on the fact that the car was idling just fine, I was like, well, injector might make sense, higher RPM, whatever. Anyways, I didn't want to drive the car home because I thought that it was an injector, and that basically the car was consuming a lot of fuel, and some of it was possibly diluting with the oil at the bottom. If the injector keeps leaking, keeps dripping, it'll drop the fuel down into your piston, and it'll get past the rings down into your oil sump. Kind of stupid of me to think that. I don't know why, but whatever. I had taken some fuel level readings or whatever, and because I was parked on inclines and declines, it came out differently depending on where I was at the time, and I was just getting in my head, really. Anyways, I eventually made the decision that I'm going to try and get my car towed home. I didn't have AAA. I didn't want to bite the bullet on a big 3-figure tow. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see if anybody at this church maybe has AAA. Maybe they're kind enough they can get me a tow to get home. I see one guy coming out of the church. I'm like, hey man, I just broke down over there. I managed to get my car here, but I'm looking for a tow. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, man, but my AAA expired like a few months back. I'm like, sure, no problem. Totally understand. Have a nice day. He's like, you know what? Actually, I'm willing to help you though. Let's go inside the church to see if there's anybody in there that can help you. So I'm like, cool, let's do it. We go inside the church. There's like nobody there, which was odd. I don't know what he was doing in there, but all of a sudden there was nobody in there. Anyways, we spend 5 minutes walking around. We come back outside, and I'm like, all right, well, it's getting kind of late. It's getting like 6 o'clock. Like, I might as well just call this tow now and just bite the bullet, pay the money, and fuck it, right? I walk back to my car, he walks back to his, and eventually he actually runs toward my car, holding up something in his hands, like, hey, sir. So I get out of the car, I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, oh, I actually just checked my AAA card, and well, it turns out that I had canceled the membership, but it doesn't expire for another few months. And I'm like, so you're telling me there's a chance? And thank God this gentleman was kind enough to call a tow for me, wait basically 2 hours till about like 8:30 almost, till the tow truck came. Ken, if you're watching this video, you really saved my life that day. All you did was save a few $100, but I super appreciate it. We had a great chat out by the church. It was a pretty nice summer day. But anyway, long story short, I get the car towed back here. Funny enough, my other roommate had been parked in the driveway and he was busy doing something, so I ended up getting the car towed toward the bottom outside. And what ended up happening is I didn't really want to start the car back up, so I let the car outside for 2-3 days. I actually used this smoke testing machine right here, per the request of my tuner, to see if there's any kind of boost leaks or anything like that. And lo and behold, down out by the street, side of the road, running this smoke machine, I found that there was smoke coming through down below toward where the turbocharger is, likely the turbo outlet pipe. which on these cars, the turbo is pretty low. And so you'd have to get underneath the car to fix it. And I was on the side of the road. I'm like, well, I don't really want my legs dangling in the road. I don't want my car to be jacked up on this really rough pavement, basically. So I eventually wait till Saturday comes around. We've got a bunch of our friends over for poker night, and I tell them, hey guys, while we're waiting for this one friend to still show up, would you guys be kind enough to help me push the car back kind of up the street, which has a pretty significant incline, and then once I turn it around, up the driveway. And they're like, yeah, sure, we got it. We're pretty big and strong. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's a 3,000 pound car, and the incline makes a difference. It makes a very big difference. And of course, I'll be in the driver's seat steering the car and working the brakes. Anyways, we get going. They're pushing backwards, and we go backwards up the street. There's a car at the top, but thankfully they were kind enough to wait for us. They even had their camera out and must have been having fun watching, whatever, 7.5 kids in their 20s pushing this car up and around. And I'm like, guys, keep pushing. And we're making it up the hill. We're doing great. We get high enough to the point where I can turn it in toward the driveway. And I let go of the brakes, turn into the driveway, but my buddies had all kind of let their hands off. So I get a certain amount up the driveway, but then there's no help from behind. I hit the brakes and I'm like, guys, get behind the car, you can get behind. Push it into the garage, all's good. And at that point, I got to work on fixing the turbo outlet pipe. Actually, it's more of like a hose. It's like a little elbow, and it had popped off. So fixed that back up in a day or two. I don't really remember how long it took me. And get back on the road, do a test drive or two. And the car's not driving perfectly. It's definitely driving, but it was still having some issues. Every time I would clutch out into neutral, the car wouldn't drop its revs. They would kind of hang around at about, 1,500, then 1,000, then 700, like they should. I didn't really know what it was, so I kept running tests. Meanwhile, I had no check engine lights the entire time, even from when the car originally broke down. So I'm running a bunch of tests. Eventually, after basically 2 weeks, I figured out that, you know what, it could be the old catch can setup that I've got. And so I replaced it with the original PCV that I had, but it took a while for that to ship. And by the time I replaced the PCV and the car was running pretty nice and smooth, that all took about 4 weeks. My tuner had also sent me a new revision file with a new calibration for the MAF sensor, which was different, and the car must have been running differently on the previous setup, possibly because of the PCV fault. It was just enabling the car to run a little bit differently, but whatever. Car's back on the road after about 4 weeks, and now it's we're approaching October, and October the 8th, I was planning on making a trip up to Nashville, 13-hour road trip. I was gonna split it up into 2 days, but what I ended up doing was spending some time here in Austin for ACL, a big music festival, and then driving up 1 day, 13 hours, sending it. And the car did perfectly fine on the drive there, no problems at all. What did happen once was that when I pulled in for gas, it stalled on me, which I just thought was driver error. I was like, oh, whatever. And anyways, driving the car around, picking up my friends. We're doing cool stuff up in Nashville, and we're there for about a week. On what must have been, let me see, probably the 10th or the 9th, it was a Thursday. I go to pick up my buddy Charlie from the airport, and it was like 6 a.m. in the morning. Charlie, you made me lose a lot of sleep picking you up that day. And I was pretty pissed. But anyways, fire up the car, bloodshot eyes. And I had recently did a code scan, and I saw an intermittent P0341, which means it's not a hard code. It just means that the P0341 is related to the cam position sensor, and that means that it's reading wrong every now and then. Not enough to trigger a true check engine light, but enough that the code scanner will pick it up and tell you, hey, there's something iffy going on. I messaged my tuner tells me, hey, there's a chance the sensor itself is just kind of going bad. Otherwise, you should check your oil level, because a lot of the things in the timing system and the VVT system are oil driven, and so if you're low on oil, it can cause some faults and can trigger that code. Or it's risk of your timing chain going bust. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense at all. I just replaced my timing chain, and those are usually good for whatever, 80,000 miles, 100,000 miles, whatever, right? So I'm kind of scratching my head, but I fire up this car in the morning, go to pick up my buddy Charlie, and while I'm just idling there, cold idle, I pop open the hood, I take a look at the sensor. It looks just fine to me. There was like a little bit of oil residue on it. I wipe it off, whatever. And while I'm in there, I hear a ticking coming from the timing cover. And I'm like, oh shit. And it was very noticeable. It would only occur at low idle. And at this point I'm like, well, what else am I gonna do? I mean, I'm still gonna try picking up my buddy Charlie, and if the car doesn't work, then whatever. I'll just get it towed to a shop or whatever happens, whatever happens, happens. So go pick up my buddy Charlie from the airport, totally fine. I was super babying the car that day. Pick him up, come back, just fine, car still hitting boost, and the ticking would only occur at low idle after a few seconds. But I'm like, okay, that's very weird. I bring the car back. We end up finishing the whole week-long event over in Nashville and having a great time. I ended up running another test using my OBD11 scanner to check the cam phasing. Essentially, it checks the position of your variable valve timing cam, which on these cars, the VVT cam is on the intake side. There's no VVT for the exhaust. So I'm like, okay, well, let's check. Typically within spec is around 4 degrees, around 4.25, 4.5, you're probably gonna have to change out the timing chain, do a little service or something. And when I checked it, I got 8.93 degrees. And panic kind of set in. I'm like, what the hell is going on? How have I not noticed that there's been something so wrong? And somewhat my fault for not ever having checked the cam phase position after I had done the timing chain service last year. I just thought that the car was totally fine and fixed and whatever. But anyways, I start doing some reading on the forums, and I'm basically figuring out that, well, there's probably something wrong with the timing system itself or something or another. And at this point, I'm getting quite uneasy. My runway of my stay in Nashville was starting to hit an end. So I say, you know what? I've still got some time. The car still drives. I'm gonna drive it to this reputable shop in the area that works on German cars. And I'm gonna end up crashing at my friend's place in Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank you, Andrew and Matthew, if you guys are watching this. I truly appreciate you guys letting me stay there for about a week while my car was getting fixed. Anyways, I leave the car at the shop on Sunday. The guys get the keys on Monday through the little Dropbox, and I left them 2 big sheets of notes on the different things that I think it could be. At this point, I was believing that it was the oil control valve for the VVT system. Typically this gets worn out and it doesn't seal properly, and essentially it's an oil driven, I guess, valve, a solenoid almost, and it shoots oil into the cam gear and allows it to adjust based on how much oil pressure is hitting it. So I'm like, hey guys, I'm hoping it's this. I'm hoping it's a quick, easy fix. They take a look at the car. Actually, I should go back a bit and preface that over the last year, since I did the timing chain, something about like a year maybe, I would occasionally get low oil pressure flashing lights on my dash. Typically, whenever I would slow down, like pulling into a gas station, we're coming up to a red light. And it was really weird. I just thought like, well, it's just a sensor going bad, because I'm very meticulous with my oil changes. I know that the oil level is perfectly fine and there's no issues with the oil pressure, because I probably would have heard something go poof, right? Anyways, I dropped the car off at the shop. The guys are saying they had an appointment for me by Wednesday, but what ends up happening is they don't end up taking a look at the car by Friday. They call me, they say, hey, we ran a few diagnostics through VAGCOM, which is the almost like a dealer tool basically for these German cars. And they figured out that the difference between the cam values, the actual positioning was about 26 degrees, while the target position was 28.5 degrees. So there was about 2.5 degrees of error, which is quite a lot. And while that might not be enough to make your valves hit your pistons, you're definitely gonna wanna fix that before you kind of get back out on the road. At this point, we thought it was the cam adjuster magnet, which controls the solenoid, because the solenoid was functioning just fine, or the control valve. And I had read that the magnet never fails on these cars, so I was very skeptical. I was like, well, guys, I don't know, but whatever. If it fixes it, it fixes it. I managed to find a few other friends to crash at in Johnson City. Thank you, Noah and Shannon, for letting me stay there for about 4.5 to 5 days. Truly appreciate it. And eventually the guys did fix the magnet. I got a bus ride from around Johnson City back to Nashville, picked up the car on, I think it was Thursday night, and Friday comes around. Friday morning, I had driven it to an Airbnb. The car still had the tick, and I knew that it probably wasn't fixed, but I was like, at this point, I'm already 2.5 weeks, if not 3 weeks overdue on this trip. Sorry, 1.5, 2 weeks overdue on this trip. So it's been a total of about 3 weeks. And I don't have any more runway. I'm homesick. I want to get back to the office. I want to go home. I don't want to spend more money for these guys to open up the timing covers and see what's wrong, because that's a $3,000 plus repair, which is so much money. And for something that I've already done, I can warranty claim on the parts to get those back for free, basically. So I'm like, fuck that. Friday morning comes around, the car's got a tick, and I am basically babying it everywhere I go. And so I end up, fucking bug. I end up just sending it, driving it down to Austin, and however far I was gonna go, that's how far I was gonna go. I would probably have to either ship the car back the rest of the way or get it towed to a city and have to stay there for a little bit, whatever. And the drive's going fine. Car's running and driving totally smooth. Even at about 70, 75 miles an hour at 3,000 RPM, it was running like a clock. I wasn't getting any crazy knock, anything like that, which I was experiencing on the drive to Nashville, and I thought that it was bad gas, so I ended up filling up at Shell for a while. Turns out it wasn't that. I get to about Arkansas. This was about, I don't know, 30 minutes after I had stopped at a Waffle House, stuffed my face with food. And I'm in Arkansas. I'm coming up on traffic. Thankfully it was flat ground there, but I come up on traffic and I basically have to go from 70 to 0 pretty quick. So I'm hitting the brakes. I'm pretty sure I popped it from 6 to neutral. And so the revs dropped from 3,000 to 700, zoop. And at this point, I get the light, I get the low oil pressure light. The car stalls on me, and I'm still in my lane, but there's cars ahead of me that are slowly starting to move, and I'm like, well, shit, I gotta get going, right? Try to crank up on the car, nothing. Nothing. I'm like, fuck, I am cooked. This is it. The car has shit the bed now. I probably jumped timing. The motor has seized Lord knows what. The motor didn't seize because it was still cranking. even though I was in neutral, but whatever. I get out of my car, pop it into neutral, key on so that I can still turn the wheel, and the battery was still just fine. The starter was still working just fine. And I do what I know best. I push the car, I steer it over into the shoulder, and thankfully there were souls that were kind enough to give me some space. I steer it all the way to the edge and close the door, and I get over into the, essentially the area by the trees off the highway basically. Call my mom, call my dad. Yo, I shit the bed in Arkansas. I'm so fucked. I'm probably gonna have to call a tow, this, that. And my father's like, yeah, well, you fucked up, dummy. You drove a 166,000 mile car, this big freaking 13-hour trip. You idiot. You should have got something reliable. I don't know why you didn't just fly there, you idiot. Whatever. And you know, I take all the blame myself. But anyways, what ends up happening is I call AAA, there's a hotline, and I'm like, you know what? While I'm waiting for this hotline, let me just jump back in the car and try cranking it for a good 2, 3, 4 seconds. Let's see. Whatever happens, happens. I mean, and if the starter fucks up or if the battery drains, well, it's just gonna be an extra few $100, whatever. So I'm sitting there, I'm on the phone with these guys on the hotline. I'm cranking it for 3 seconds. Roars to life. And at this point, I am saying all my prayers. I'm so thankful, and I'm not letting this car shut off till I make it to Dallas, which is where I probably had to refuel. Dallas would have been basically home stretch for me since I'm in Austin. I have a few friends in Dallas. I'd be close enough to the point where I could more safely break down there. God forbid, right? So anyways, I jump back on the road. I start making good time. I make it to Dallas, and I refuel there. No problem at all. What I had figured out at this point was that whenever the car would slow down rapidly or the revs would drop, it would lose oil pressure, whether that be because the oil pickup was losing oil or because actually what happens is that the revs drop enough and the VVT system, which is oil driven, when there's a rapid loss of RPMs, the oil pressure drops, and because of the sudden oil pressure drop, the VVT system doesn't function properly and it just jams up, it stalls, whatever. So I try and keep the revs high on my way back. Every time I have to slow down for something, I'm popping out of gear and I'm still giving it some gas and using my other foot on the brake for a little bit, which, you know, worked fine for the most part. Eventually, as I kind of made my way out of Dallas, I hit some traffic there. I stalled again there, but thankfully it cranked back up on the first try. Made it all the way down to Austin okay because I had enough fuel. And yeah, so Austin, I hit traffic on I-35 and it kind of sucked ass, honestly. But I made it here. The car's been in the garage now for about, I don't know, a week or two. I've been assembling a whole boatload of parts, which I guess I'll take the liberty now of showing you guys. We've got a new camshaft right in here. We've got oil change kits right in there. I have a new impact wrench. This awesome Milwaukee fuel. And let's see, over here we've got a load of new parts for the timing system. I'm also probably going to order balance shafts because I figure, well, while I'm in there, I might as well change them out. So this past weekend, myself and my buddy Ford, we got to work on doing a whole bunch of stuff, and we're getting ready to get this car back on the road, really, because it's a bit of a shame that it's down and out, but it definitely has more miles in it so long as I fix up the camshaft, the VVT, and also hopefully the balance shafts. I'm going to do a quick little service on those, make sure that the little screens that prevent things from going through your oil passages, which can a lot of times get blocked up with gunk and whatever, and the screen will blow out sometimes and it'll get into your cam, it'll get into your balance shafts, it'll get wherever, and it'll just fucking make a mess. So I'm gonna be popping out all of the screens and getting the car back on the road. Probably be a good 2 weeks at least. So we'll see, but stay tuned, guys. I hope to have some more videos, some more, I don't know, something about the car soon. And hopefully by the time it's done, we'll have a few videos of it driving around, maybe a few highway pulls. That'd be fun. Maybe like a little burnout or something. And possibly in the future, we'd be looking at a rear main seal upgrade, a possible clutch upgrade with an LSD, and then possibly going big turbo because I've got the fueling set up for it. And all I would need to do is basically throw on a new manifold with an upgraded turbo, figure out a boost control setup, and then let it rip. So I'm excited, y'all, but appreciate you staying tuned this long. And if you can, keep your fingers crossed that everything with this job goes well. I don't round any bolts as I'm taking them off or whatever. But yeah, Cello GTI out.